So this is a video on section 3 for the FSA pathways, both 1 and 2. And this, we're looking at the assessment document here. We've got myself, Steve Millis, and Tony Holes. This looks like a pretty simple section. Remember, just for all of these assessments, download the latest assessment tool off eLearn. Make sure you read these drop-down instructions. And then you've got some examples and the learner guide to refer to for information as well. So Tony, this first part saying select the measures being assessed from the drop-down menu. And if you click the text, it will take you to the appropriate tab. So there's a couple pre-selected here, but if you click on the drop-down, it gives you the list of measures that you can choose. So you select the one that you are going to do. Now we've got emergency planning up there because if you're doing pathway 1, you must do emergency planning as well as one other measure. And remember, you have to do at least 2 different measures down here, but both buildings must have emergency planning. If you're doing pathway 2 as a standalone, you do not have to do emergency planning. But if you're doing a combination of pathway 1 and 2, you'll need to do emergency planning on at least 2 of the buildings to satisfy the requirements of both pathway 1 and 2. I'll explain all that in the training as well. So you can select the measure. This one here has got hydrant systems on it. I've got this document open as an Excel document, not in the browser, which is often the case when you open up this document straight from OneDrive. So you can work in both of those scenarios.
So we'll have to go and get this.
Yep, straight on OneDrive or opened as a spreadsheet. I just muted you there, Tony. But if I click on this here, it takes me straight to the tab along the bottom for fire hydrant systems. So along the bottom of this spreadsheet is a tab for each individual measure. So I'm just going to navigate using this feature here. So all I did was I had to hit function, and then click on that, and it takes me to the fire hydrant individual tab. We'll get to that later on. But going back here, all right, so let's say you've selected fire hydrant systems. And then we get over to this part here, and we've got performance required. So I guess, Tony, over to you. What's that asking us to put in there?
So it's minimum the performance requirement of the fire safety schedule, which will include any FERs, fire engineers reports that may be on the schedule. But we want something a little bit more than that, and that relates to section 1. Well, what is the date of the NCC that you're going to be using? And what is the date of the standard, not the current standard, but the standard that you'll be using for this particular measure. So for hydrants, you might say NCC section E, what 1 point, can't remember what one that is off the top of my head.
1.3.
1.6, 1.3.
Yeah.
But then what year is relevant for this particular building of that NCC? Is it an Ordnance 70 system? Is it what is it? And then the standard itself, AS 2419, and then the date of the standard that relates to that particular building age. So the standard would obviously have been developed or written prior to the building age date for it to be used as a performance standard.
Yep. So just to reinforce that, you must have the BCA, or if, as you mentioned, if it's an ordnance standard, whatever ordinance is applicable to that measure, and the year, and then you must have the standard and the year, and then you must have any FER information that's also mentioned on the schedule if that's applicable. Now, when I'm assessing this, if you're missing the year of the BCA, you're going to get it back, or the year of the standard, or you haven't put the BCA in there, you will get this back, and you'll have to resubmit that. It is a common thing for students to put in there just what they see on the schedule. And that might be okay when you're submitting the statement, because some councils want the statement to be specific to the schedule, even if it doesn't have the years and whatnot on it. But for the sake of this assessment, and the way that you should be operating anyways, you should nominate the performance that you're assessing to. You must nominate the performance that you're assessing to.
I guess that still feeds into that disparity report for people doing the FSA 2, Pathway 2 as well, Steve, where we're looking for the disparity between the particular standard that you are assessing the building to and what standard would be current. So the unit of competency specifically requires that aspect of the work to be identified or assessed by us. And it's really important that we know that people understand that assessment should be done to an historic version of the standard, possibly.
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't have to assess to the latest standards. It's whatever is nominated here that you've either determined through the evidence that you've gathered back up here, or is explicitly on the schedule.
Yep.
And then over here, you've got your final result. This can be either a pass or a fail. And this will be determined once you complete the assessment of the measure and the whole document. The final thing really to do is to come back to this section 3 and indicate whether you've passed or failed the measure.
And we don't really care which one it is.
No, that's right. And that's a good point. The measure that you assess for the sake of the unit of competence with us here at Axiom, it doesn't have to pass. The measure doesn't have to pass. But what you must pass is you must show evidence of having a process that you've worked through, an evidence-based process.
Yeah.
And often when you follow that evidence-based process, you do commonly get a fail here.
Yep.